Alright, so here we go with the game room tour. We're starting off with my dog Sandy here, who is taking it easy in the game room right now. And let's go ahead and just do first a quick pan around the room here. So you can see we've got some shelves and containers on the right side there. Then as we move across, I've got my Street Fighter stick on the table there, along with some wireless controllers. There's my TV setup, and you can see I've got two cabinets there. The right cabinet is basically all consoles, and the left cabinet has my Xbox in it along with the AV equipment. Overall in the room, I've got a 5.2 surround sound system with one subwoofer there. I think that's a Klipsch subwoofer. And then I've got a Sony subwoofer in the other corner of the room. Because this is a basement, it does have concrete floors, so the second subwoofer actually adds a nice little punch that you don't really get with just the one. So yeah, and then as we continue to move across here, you can see I've got some disc-based games, Xbox games, things like that. One shelf there, another shelf there, my surround speakers. We've got the couch. And then here behind the couch, we have some additional storage and things like that. So this room is basically split in half between this front half that you're seeing now, obviously is dedicated to, you know, the TV and the games and movies and things like that. And the back half of this room that I'm standing in right now is where my office is located. So here's a look at the cabinet that holds my different consoles, and we'll go ahead and take a closer look at this, but I just wanted to kind of give you a view from back a little bit here first. So I've got some of these consoles that are permanently hooked up and are just a switch box away. Others, like the RF consoles on the top shelf there, I have one RF cable that I just switch between those when I'm going to use that particular console. And I keep the adapters, the power bricks and things like that, in that black box there. So I just kind of pull out one as I need it for an individual system. And then just real quick too, I want to show you a few other things. On top of this case here, I've got a couple things I picked up recently. I've got some old electronic handheld games similar to ones that I had when I was a kid. Got those really cheap, and I've got those just sitting here for now next to this Pac-Man game that I also picked up a while back, and this thing is really cool. I actually did a little bit of restoration on it, put a new marquee sticker on it and things like that, so I'm a big fan of that thing, obviously. And then looking at the back here, it may be kind of hard to see, and it may still not look that impressive, but this, I actually spent a lot of time trying to get the wiring right because I have so many different consoles back here, or in this cabinet, that I wanted to do something so that it wouldn't be an absolute jungle. So you can see I've got all the wires sorted, not really tangled up or anything like that. And then I have them going into two power strips there. The power strip on the right, I generally keep off most of the time so that I don't put power to the consoles I don't use on a regular basis. And then once I flip that on, I get about half the consoles that, you know, I can turn on immediately from that. So looking a little bit more closely inside the shelf here, or inside this cabinet, you can see on the first level I've got my TurboGrafx, unfortunately missing the back shielding there. I've got my Atari Jaguar, which I actually rescued and fixed this thing. It was in pretty sad shape and didn't work, but I was able to repair that and get that working. And then we got a Master System back there that I honestly don't really play that much. Then down on the next shelf here, we've got my Sega Saturn, which is a chipped Saturn. We've got a Sega CDX, a 32X next to that, along with the necessary cables. And then if you can kind of see it in the back there, go ahead and flip open the lid. That is my 3DO FZ10 top loader, if you will, 3DO. And the next shelf down here, we've got my AES, Neo Geo AES, my black sports, Sega Sports Dreamcast back there. A couple of PS1s, just because PS1s are so dirt cheap right now, I decided to buy a backup because the bottom one there is my original PS1 from, you know, back in the mid-90s. And that's also chipped, but I've found that the discs, it doesn't seem to be reading discs quite as well anymore. So since I do have a lot of non-burned games at this point, I've got a regular PS1 that I just use. I think that's like a later model too, that I just use kind of when I'm going to use the system generally. And then down on this next shelf here, this one's really packed, so I'm going to go ahead and first show you these, and then I'm going to pull out the front consoles here. So we've got a silver slim PS2 there with a couple of awesome Logitech wireless controllers plugged into it. We've got an NES, and that one actually works really well. It doesn't have too many problems with blinking and things like that, so that's why I've got it out in my main collection here. And then we've got a silver GameCube with the Game Boy player and a Wavebird attached to that right now. So, and I'm going to go ahead and pull these out here, and I'll show you what we've got. Okay, so now behind those other systems I showed you on this shelf, I've got a Jungle Green N64 and my original Super Nintendo that, again, I picked up back in the early 90s. Still works great, haven't had any problems with it, and it's nice to, you know, have some of your old systems as well. So, and you might wonder, because of the you know, the number of systems I have packed into the shelf, if it's difficult to get them hooked up. But this S-Video cable, this Nintendo S-Video cable, actually fits in the N64, the Super Nintendo, and the GameCube. So basically, I just switch it between each system that I want to use, and it only takes a second to pull those consoles out in front there if I want to use either of those. So it works pretty well. And then down on the next shelf here, we've got an Xbox, which is hacked, has a 120 gig hard drive in it, has all kinds of goodies on it. It's kind of funny because I can probably play about 80% of my collection, at least the, you know, pre-PS1 stuff, easily on the Xbox, but I still collect anyway. And then below that, we've got a Toshiba Nuon DVD system that I picked up for a song at a thrift store a while back. I actually just found another one of those that I'll be showing in my next pickups video. And, you know, I was kind of fascinated by it at first and wanted to get to know it better, bought a controller for it, found some games, things like that. But haven't really done much with it lately, so it may not be staying in this main shelf too much longer. We'll just have to see. It's convenient because it's a front loader, so I can stack stuff on top of it. And then down on the bottom shelf here, I've got a ColecoVision, which again is hooked up via RF. And then behind that, this is probably going to be a little difficult to see, but behind that, way back there, we've got an Atari 7800. And I've got some 2600s as well, but not out. I like the 7800 because it has that backwards compatibility feature so that you can play the 2600 games as well as the 7800 games on that. And then over here to the left of the case is my PS3 Slim that I just recently picked up. You can see I don't have the panel on the hard drive at the moment. I'm probably going to be switching that hard drive out for a bigger one, so I was just kind of taking a look at that. My pre-NES 8-bit games get shafted a little bit. I don't really keep them out just because of space at the moment, but I do want to have some in the game room here, so I kind of just rotate into these cases that I leave under the counter or under the cabinet here. Some 2600 and 7800 games. Sometimes I'll have Intellivision games and ColecoVision games that I leave under here as well, just, you know, depending on what my mood is at the time. So I'm not going to go through all of these in detail, but you can see just some of the ones that we've got sitting out currently. Some more in there. So eventually I would like to get more space. I can't complain too much. I've got a pretty good amount of space, but eventually I would like to get more space and be able to do justice to some of these older games and things like that I just don't really have anywhere to display at the moment. All right, now starting at the top and working our way down in the other cabinet here. First of all, you can see I've got this really cool Galaxy 2 electronic game. Picked this thing up for, I think, $0.25 or 50 cents at a garage sale. I think it was last summer. And that is a really surprising, I mean, first of all, it looks great. It really, it's just an awesome retro-looking piece of electronics. But the game is actually surprisingly solid. It more resembles Galaga than like Space Invaders or something like that, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun. Just sucks down batteries, unfortunately. And then, yeah, you got a couple Xbox 360 controllers there, and then we've got my 360 itself with the blue faceplate on and the HD DVD drive that I picked up a little while back for that. And I do actually have a couple of HD DVD movies as well. And since we're on looking at the systems, kind of on the subject of the systems here, I thought I'd show you some of my other organizational tricks that I use here. One of them is this basket. And this basket is really filled with just a good selection of controllers for all the systems that I currently have hooked up and in that main cabinet there. I keep all the cords tied up so that they don't get all tangled up to each other and things like that. And it works pretty well. I can usually reach in there and in just a minute or two grab out, a couple of controllers for just about any system without too much hassle. And, as opposed to I've seen so many different ways that people have tried to organize controllers, and some of them I like better than others, but I find that this way works pretty well because, it doesn't really make a big eyesore in the rest of the room. It feels like it kind of fits. And then I mentioned in here too that I try not to leave all my system's AC adapters plugged in because I just, I don't play each individual system all that frequently, so I just keep the ones that I know I'm going to use on a regular basis sitting in this black container here. And then I've got an extension cord that I've got hooked up to that second switch I was telling you about before. So I just unravel that extension cord when I want to play one of these and just plug it into there and then just take it out and put it back in the box when I'm done. And then over here to the right of my shelf, I've got another box here. And this box is kind of more like controller overflow. So I've got more controllers in here for the systems that can take 4 controllers. Plus I got some weird and unusual controllers that I keep in here as well. For example, I've got a couple of these Docs wireless N64 controllers. You can see I've got a Lethal Enforcers box there with the Justifier in it. This is where I might keep third-party controllers or other random interesting things. Like I've got a fishing controller. I've got this Ultra Racer 64 in here. I've got some other color variations for the N64. I've got this my Sega Saturn analog controller in here. Just random odds and ends that you might reach into. Just picked this up recently, this Quick Shot Super NES controller with the turbo switches. And that cool Minecraft torch. I actually just picked that up recently and still deciding what I want to do with it, if I want to hang it up here in the game room or put it in my son's room or what, but I do love that, and it lights up and everything. If only it gave off pixelated smoke, it would be perfect. Alright, now sitting in the main couch, kind of in the center of the room here, I'm going to go ahead and just pan around real quick and say kind of the order we're going to go. So we're going to start over here next, looking at this shelf here, which has mostly got 8 and 16-bit cartridge-based games, along with my PS1 games and some other overflow and things like that. Then we're going to move over to this side of the room, look at my 360 games, look at the games we've got on this shelf over here, and this shelf over here. Okay, so starting with the shelving unit here, first of all, on the top, I've got a really cool boxed mint, like new Sony PlayStation. That's actually a Japanese model PlayStation. It also includes those boxed memory cards, as you can see there, in that boxed mouse. And believe it or not, I actually found that at a garage sale for $1 for the entire bundle a few years back. For some reason, the guy was just looking to unload it, and I just couldn't believe my luck in finding it. Then you got a DS box there. That's my daughter's DS. You've got a Neo Geo X box there. And unfortunately, as I mentioned in one of my other videos, my Neo Geo X actually is dead. So I'm looking to get another handheld unit at some point. And then we've got a Kinect box back there that found my Kinect at the Goodwill for really, really cheap. So don't really play it that much, but I do have it. Now looking at the next shelf down here, we've got mostly, well, yeah, all handhelds on this shelf. And you can see we've got Sony PSP 1001 and 3001. I made a video about those a while back. Below that, we've got my Atari Lynx, which is actually my original Lynx, bought new back in 1990, 91, something like that. And yeah, I was a Lynx Defender then. I'm still a Lynx Defender now. It's a great system. Certainly has its drawbacks, but really is a great system. You can see that awesome Donkey Kong Game & Watch system there. That thing is mint. That box is kind of an unusual variant. And that thing was bought at a random half-price books probably about 5 years ago for $10. I happened to be walking in just as he was putting that thing out, and yeah, I was excited. We've got a Turbo Express there. Turbo Express actually is not in the best shape at the moment. It needs a cap replacement, no sound, and I think no picture even at this point. It still powers up, but you know, you can't do much with it. And it's actually missing the battery cover as well, unfortunately. But I'll have to share the story sometime about where I found that thing and how much I paid for it, because needless to say, it was cheap enough that I was able to overlook all those issues. But it did work originally. It's kind of deteriorated more since I've had it. Okay, and then we've got a original Game Boy Advance there. We've got a Sega Nomad underneath that. We've got my Game Boy Advance SPs, all 6 of them, due to the fact that Goodwills just can't seem to realize that they're worth more than $2.99, so their loss is my gain, I guess. And we've got a Game Boy Color here. This is like a clear purple one with an interesting email cartridge that I found one time. Of course, I'm sure it doesn't do a thing anymore, but it's actually got a phone jack on the top of it there. And then this awesome Game Boy Light. I'm not going to get into too many stories about how I found these things in this video. I plan on doing that in some future videos, but this one in particular was just really great. I was at a garage sale, and they actually had some Neo Geo Pocket color games there, which I was really excited because you don't see those at garage sales too frequently. So I asked the woman that was working at the garage sale if she had the system to go with the games. It's like, oh, let me check. And she runs back into the some boxes, starts digging through some boxes, and she pulls this out and says, oh, yeah, here you go. And I'm like, wait, what? Of course, I didn't say anything to her, except for how much. And when she told me, I think it was $1 or $2, I was like, well, thank you so much for finding that for me. And then we've got a Game Boy Micro, I'm sorry, Game Boy Pocket, which of course has the better screen than the standard Game Boy and is a good way to play your black and white Game Boy games. And then we've got a standard DS here. As you saw before, we do have some DS Lites as well. But that was one that I, again, found that thing in a really bad state and recased it and put an R4 card in it, and now it's just an awesome little bundle of happiness. You know, you can take it out and have lots of fun with that. All right, going down to the next shelf, we've got my NES games here. I think I have about 60 or 70 NES games in total. Nothing super exciting here, I guess, aside from that Tengen Tetris, which, you know, I found that randomly at a garage sale or something like that for just a few dollars. And, you know, when I first started following the retro gaming community back in the 90s when the internet was kind of a new thing, that was the first game that I recall where people thought that game was just unbelievably rare. Again, there was just not as much information out there at that time, and people kind of knew the backstory with Nintendo suing Tengen and them having to take it off the market. So needless to say, when I found it, you know, I thought I had found one of the rarest games ever, but of course the reality is that these days it's an uncommon game, but it's certainly not one of the rarer NES games. But still an interesting game. Really a good quality game too. I think that's the biggest part about it. So if I move that aside there, you can see some of the other games we've got here. This is one of the few collections that I haven't taken the time to alphabetize yet, but I will one of these days. You can also see I've pretty much hit the limit for how many I can store in this current configuration, so I'm going to have to figure something else out here. And also I've got a Honeybee and a couple of bootleg Famicom games just randomly found at a garage sale one time, so not sure what, you know, don't expect to run into things like that at a garage sale. We've got our 3DS here, just some little trinkets. My Pac-Man watch that I showed in another video, along with this Mario watch that I also showed in another video. And my Neo Geo AES games. And again, nothing that's really expensive or uncommon here. But my number one goal with my AES was to get Samurai Showdown 2. And you can see that that is in there. That was really, I mean, that's one of my all-time favorite games, and it was really one of the games I wanted for my AES. Okay, this next shelf, again, starting to get a little bit full. But here's my Sega Genesis games. Been a big fan of the Genesis, you know, since the 90s. Didn't own one for a long time, but I had friends that owned it, and I actually used to borrow the system quite a bit from one of my friends and rent games for it. So I had played a ton of these games over the years before I started collecting for it. But you can see it's gone too deep there, so I'm going to go ahead and pull some of those out just so you can see what's back there. But we've got some really good games in here as well, especially if you look at some of the loose titles. Some of my highlights here would be the Streets of Rage 3, which that was a really great find. And I've, of course, got Streets of Rage 1 and 2 as well. Kid Chameleon was a favorite back in the days. You can see we've got some Box 32X games back there. Box T-Mech, that's a little bit more uncommon one to find. We've got Shadow Squadron, Knuckles Chaotix boxed. And 32X games have really gone up in value over the years. It's funny because Knuckles Chaotix in particular, I can kind of remember that game for many, many years was considered really to be a bad game, but it seems like now everyone treats it as some kind of a hidden gem. So interesting the way that people's opinions change. And here's the loose games. And you can see we've got, again, some good titles in here. Love that Super Smash TV, Space Harrier 2, Mutant League Football, Paperboy, that's a solid port. All right, let's go ahead and pull some of these out here so you can see. So there's the rest of the Genesis games. Got some Mortal Kombat 2 and 3 back there. Well, 1, 2, and 3. Some Street Fighter. Thunder Force 3, that's a really great game. And then of the ones I pulled out here, I've got a couple of cool games that I've just got in generic cases. We've got Shinobi 3 and Ease 3. All right, down to the next shelf here. We've got primarily Super Nintendo games here. Got some box games over there to the right, and then that entire back section is filled with loose cartridges. And again, I'll go ahead and pull some of these boxes out so you can see some of the other titles in there. I do have a handful of boxed N64 games, a couple of boxed Jaguar games that I just kind of threw down here just because they are the right size. Yeah, and again, these are all alphabetized here. These two right here are really cool. Picked these up at a garage sale some years back. Somehow the lady that was selling these, she had received these, or her kids had received these as gifts years ago, brand new and sealed. F-Zero and Pilot Wings, and the way she told the story was she didn't actually have a Super Nintendo, so she couldn't do anything with those games, and so she sold them to me for, I think, $5 for the pair, brand new, sealed in the box. So those are really cool. And you know, I'm not a big sealed game collector, but when you run across something like that, it's kind of cool to have in your collection. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pull these boxes out so you can see more of what we've got back there. All right, so here's the Super Nintendo shelf with everything else pulled out of here. It's kind of hard to see those ones in the top, but you got ActRaiser, Donkey Kong Country, things like that up there. You got Doom. My first time playing Doom, which is one of my all-time favorite games, was on the Super Nintendo. So yeah, we got a lot of good titles in here. We've got Super Metroid, we've got Super Castlevania 4, Total Carnage, all three of the Star Wars games, or Super Star Wars games. Definitely some solid games in here. Earth Defense Force, UN Squadron, Darius Twin. And yeah, I've owned the Super Nintendo since, like I said, about 1992 or so. And one of the first games I got for it was Star Fox, and still have that one in the box right there, along with my box Super Mario World, which is kind of unusual to find in the box as well. Okay, and then in the bottom shelf here, I actually have these baskets. I think a lot of collectors struggle with the best way to organize their N64 games because they don't have the end labels on them, and they just in general are a real pain to deal with. I've got about 80 or so games in here. You can see we've got multiple levels of games. And this is actually more organized than this basket usually is. I kind of just encourage either myself or when my kids or someone else is using this system, you just kind of go through and pull, dig through it, find what you're looking for, just toss the stuff back in there you don't want. I find it's probably the best way that I've found, aside from, making cases, which I know some people do, and organizing them that way. This is about the best way that you can quickly get through your N64 games and find what it is that you're looking for. So unfortunately I can't really show you a lot of the titles that I have here, but again, I've got about 80 or so loose games here, and yeah, I've got most of the standards, the big Mario franchise, or the big Nintendo franchises like Mario and Zelda and things like that. So, and then this next basket here is actually full of different binders, and the binders have some burned games in them for my modded systems, but lots of loose games as well. I'd say I probably have maybe 40 to 50 PS1, some PS2, Xbox, everything else. I'm not going to go through these in this video, but I may go through some of these at a later date because I do have some good games there in those binders as well. Okay, so moving to the left of that shelf now, I've got another shelf here that I just recently put together. You can see my kids have their Disney Infinity characters all over those right now. And this is primarily, a lot of it is PS1 games. Up here in the top in this case here, I have a handful of sealed PS1 games. And again, there's nothing crazy in there, but these are just, again, I don't collect sealed games, but I will buy them if I find them for a really good price. And these are just a selection of games over the years that for some reason I've found sealed. Now looking at my PS1 collection itself, this is probably my biggest collection of any one particular system. I want to say I'm pushing close to 300 games for the PS1 now. And I've been a big fan of the system really since it first came out. So we've got one shelf here, and I'll zoom in a little bit and go through some of the titles there. You can also see that we've got some Japanese games there, just a handful, but some good games there like Densha to Go, Jet to Go, this XI, which is known here as I forget the name of it now, Devil Dice I think is what it's called, and a couple more Japanese games over here. And again, believe it or not, I found most of these I didn't import these or anything crazy like that. Found these two at different garage sales for $1 or $2 a piece. We got Street Fighter Zero and then a Mega Man Battle and Chase, I believe it is there. And these were sitting at half-price books one day, and again, they were marked at like $1.99 a piece. So I do have the modded PS1, plus I've got that Japanese one I showed you earlier, so I've certainly got a way to play those. And here's some more titles down here on the next shelf. And you can see we're starting to run out of space. I've got a few stacked up here in front, unfortunately. And I plan on doing a more in-depth look at this collection because I could talk about a lot of these different games. There's a lot of great games for the PS1 that made an impression on me over the years. But for now, I'm just going to kind of show you the different titles that we have here. We've got this Resident Evil 3, which again, I found that just recently for $4.99, brand new and sealed. Why that was sitting at a thrift store recently, I don't know, but I am not complaining. Okay, and then down on the third shelf here, we've got even more PS1 games here. And as you can see, these have all been alphabetized. And we got some good stuff there. If Ralph would move, I could show you the bottom ones there. But yeah, we got some uncommon games definitely in this group. PS1 games just in general, it wasn't that many years ago that everyone was just giving these things away. It's kind of shocking to me now that you don't see too many of them out in the wild anymore, because I started to think that maybe there was just a limitless supply of these games based on how many I would see and how cheap they were. And I'm glad that I was picking them up. Whenever I saw an interesting title, something that kind of popped out at me that I wanted to check out, I was glad I was picking them up because, yeah, you just don't see them as much as you used to anymore. And I know people speculate about what the next, big collector systems are going to be, and I think the PS1 is probably going to be one of those. I think a lot of people have a lot of nostalgia for the games on this system. Okay, next row down here is primarily what I would call maybe an overflow shelf. I've got 360 games stored elsewhere, which you'll see in a few minutes here, but these are just some, ones that don't fit on that shelf anymore, more recent ones that I've picked up here. And also I've got my PS3 collection there, which, I didn't pick up the system too long ago, so it's still fairly small. And these are a lot of the games that they're selling pretty cheap at places like GameStop right now. So I've just been picking them up as I run across them. Let's go ahead and pull these out real quick, just so you can see some more of the Xbox games back there. And now to the bottom shelf. This is mostly Wii games here, as you can see. And we do have more Wii games upstairs. Our Wii is actually connected to the TV upstairs, since the kids do use that one more frequently than I do. So some of their games are sitting upstairs. These are just mainly games that I've picked up or were bought for me over the years. And Wii games are another one that's they're starting to go really cheap now, so I've been picking them up whenever I just happen to see a handful of cheap games out there that are interesting. And we got a few just kind of odds and ends here, some loose Master System games. Didn't really have anywhere to put those, so I just kind of stuck those over here. And a handful of loose Jaguar games, same story, just didn't really have anywhere else to put them, so I just went ahead and stuck them over here. Nothing really exciting here. We got Tempest 2000, we got Iron Soldier, the terrible Club Drive, and the just about equally terrible Cybermorph sitting there. Okay, so we're making our way over to the other side of the room now. Got my Muhammad Ali poster. Love that poster. And underneath that, we've got this cool rack here that I picked up at a garage sale, of course. It holds about 80 different discs. And this one is filled with 360 games at this point. I'm just going to cycle through some of them here so you can see them. And yeah, I mean, 360 games, I've started to really see a large number of these coming down in price. I don't pay full price for too many of my games, or anywhere near full price. And the fact that I've got this many 360 games tells me that the prices on these have really been coming down. It's, one of those things where you start to acquire more and not even realize how many you've got until you're starting to fill up shelves and things like that. Moving over here to the left past Neo, we've got, again, a little bit more of an overflow here. We've got some PS2 games here. These are some more recent pickups, recent being the last 6 months or so probably, that haven't been put into the main shelves and alphabetized and all that stuff yet. I'm just kind of keeping them here for now. Same with the Xbox games over there to the right. And then up on the top here are actually, these are almost all sealed games that I bought when the games were still being sold in the stores new. This is when they were going on like massive clearance discounts. And most of those Xbox games I actually got for $10 a piece, with the intention of playing them all, but of course I haven't gotten to them yet, with the backlog being what it is. And now they're worth so much more to keep sealed than they would be to open, that what I probably will do eventually is just go ahead and sell the sealed ones and then use the money to buy non-sealed ones to play, and of course use the rest of the money towards other fun stuff. And then above that here we've got the main Xbox shelves. I've got about 220 or so Xbox games in total, including some of the loose ones I referred to earlier in those binders. So got a lot of good titles in here. I'd like to say that I've played them all to completion, but of course I haven't. But I'm certainly I'm happy with the games that I've got for the most part. They're all games I found interesting and wanted to check out at one point or another, and when you find them cheap, you grab them. Way up here on the top shelf, we've got my Sega Saturn games here. And again, no Panzer Dragoon sagas or anything like that, but we do have, some cool games. I think games that help to kind of define the Saturn and what it was all about. We got Quake, which that was actually a really solid port and kind of showed that the Saturn was capable of more than people gave it credit for. The infamous Sega Saturn 3-pack with Daytona and Virtua Fighter 2 and Virtua Cop. We've got Three Dirty Dwarves, which is an interesting game. Fighting Vipers, Fighters Mega Mix, which is classic. Got a Knights over there to the right. So continuing across the fireplace here, you can see that cool rack I've got for my Rock Band instruments. That rack comes apart and expands out to make a microphone stand, which I just love that. And then, of course, when you put it all back together, it holds the 4 guitars, the microphone, the drumsticks, and everything else. So, and again, great thrift store, brand new in the box for like $5. So, my nobody likes Rock Band and things like that anymore. So that was my benefit because that thing was really cheap. And then on the other side of the fireplace here, we've got my Dreamcast games. Not a huge collection by any means, but got a lot of good games in here. Both I think just Sonic Adventure 1 is in here. I think I've got 2 for the GameCube. But yeah, we've got a lot of cool games in here. We got Shenmue D2, which I've played a little bit of, but I would like to spend some more time with that one. Zombie Revenge, that's a cool game. House of the Dead 2, and so on. And the next shelving unit, I just want to say real quick too before I get to that shelving unit that when we moved into this house, these were actually bare walls. This wall here actually has brick behind it that matches the rest of the fireplace. And then these were just bare white walls. So I built this false wall on here just to kind of give the room some continuity. And then I built these shelves at the same time that I did that, these in-wall shelves here. And it's funny now to think back on it because when I built these shelves, I thought, boy, these have so much. I didn't realize they were going to have so much room until I'd put them together. And I thought, what am I ever going to fill these up with? And I guess you ask the question, you get the answer. Okay, so on the top 2 shelves here, we've got PS2 games. And again, I have a pretty large PS2 collection, probably about 220 to 250 games for that system. Again, almost all bought locally at thrifts, garage sales, things like that. That Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was one I picked up just last summer at a fantastic neighborhood garage sale that I don't know how people were missing it, or maybe there were just no other people looking for video games there that day because they just had a treasure trove of games and they were selling them really cheap. So again, we've got a lot of great titles in here. I would like at some point to go through this in more detail in a separate video, just kind of covering this system, because there's a lot of quality stuff in here for sure. And yes, they are all alphabetized. I think I mentioned that already, but and we got a few in overflow here. Just recently picked these up. Next shelf down here, we got these Nuon games, which are all fakes. They're very hard to find, even on eBay and places like that, but I was able to find a website that had downloads of all the images, and I was able to find all those covers as well. So for the time being, that will work. And then we've got some Sega CD jewel cases, some 3DO jewel cases. We've got the 3DO long boxes going across the top there. Classic Need for Speed, which is a great game. I'm actually a big fan of like that Madden football. It's kind of an interesting, between the 16-bit and then the future 32 and up versions of the game. And then we've got my GameCube collection here. Again, not a huge collection, but a lot of good stuff in this collection. Stuff that I've enjoyed playing over the years. We do have Pac-Man Versus and the capability to hook that entire thing up. That is a really fun game to play with, up to 4 people. Resident Evils, Sonic games, the the Star Wars games, which are great. Got Mario Sunshine. WarioWare Mega Party games, one of my absolute favorite series, and that WarioWare Mega Party games is a great time if you've got a group of people. We actually did some of my son's birthday parties kind of centered around that game, and it was a lot of fun. Got a handful of DS games, 3DS games. We actually have a sealed Lynx game sitting over here too. We got more of these DS and 3DS games kind of scattered around the house that my kids have, but these are just some ones that I keep down here. And then yes, my PS1 long box collection, and I think everybody that collects has kind of had a love affair with the PS1 long boxes. They're just a really cool. They're really great to look at. They look really great on the shelf. And yeah, there's a lot of good titles in here. And I mean, I think it's gotten to the point where these have become so popular that you don't even run across, the sports titles and things like that in long box too often anymore. And it seems like people are excited to pick up long boxes, even if it is, NHL Face-Off or something like that. So, but I'm fortunate to have some pretty good long box games here. You got Doom there, got Twisted Metal. We've got the original Ridge Racer, D, In the Hunt, Resident Evil, Road Rash, and so on. And then next to those, we've got my Sega CD games here. Found a big chunk of these at one garage sale where the guy let me have an entire stack for $5. And yeah, we got some really great games here. You can see we got the Night Trap, the cardboard box of Night Trap there. I think that's the newer version, if I'm not mistaken. I do have the older version loose as well somewhere. I think there were some cuts made. Yeah, I think the guy doesn't hold up a Sega Genesis controller anymore in the new ones or something like that. And some bead art there that my kids made. All right, now coming around to the back of the game room here. This is now behind the couch. This is where it starts to encroach a little bit on my office, but I've got enough space here that I can handle it. But again, I got a little creative here because I love accessories and extra controllers and things like that, but I just cannot have them sitting all over the room, and I also can't bear them to be all packed away in the garage. So picked up this nice leather-bound storage box not too long ago. And looking inside of here, and this thing is really, I mean, it's like Tetris-like packed here. Every angle is filled, or every spare square inch is filled here. So I'm not going to really pull out everything, but you can see I've got a couple of those Street Fighter 6-button pads, one for the Xbox, one for the PS2 there. I've got an analog joystick for the PS1. I've got a bunch of arcade sticks in here for like the Genesis and the Super Nintendo, PS1. I've got one of those virtual golf games for the PS2. Some of my Neo Geo sticks are in here. My Sega Dreamcast keyboard. Oh yes, and of course steering wheels. I've got an Xbox 360 steering wheel in here. I don't remember. I think that's the only steering wheel I have in here. So, and yeah, it packs up pretty well. Doesn't look like too much of an eyesore, but it allows me to keep a lot of these things close at hand here. And next to that that leather case here, I've got just some more storage. Again, I keep this behind the couch, so it's not really sitting out in the game room, but easily accessed. First drawer is really just a lot of random power cords and adapters, AV cables, things like that. Stuff that you just never know if you're going to need it when you've got so many gaming systems. Next drawer holds my PSP collection. And there's quite a few in here, as people have been mentioning on a lot of videos. The PSP right now, it's a great time to be buying for it because everyone seems to just be clearing their games out. So I've got a lot of cool games I still need to get to for the PSP. Got a bunch of loose games here as well. And next drawer down here, again, just a lot of random accessories and things like that. We've got that PlayStation Link cable. We've got some extension cables, some cleaning cartridges. Got bags here with like jumper packs. I've got an extra memory pack for the N64. Tons and tons of memory cards. I've got a couple stores near me right now that are selling PS1 and PS2 memory cards so cheap that I almost want to go in there and just buy them all. You know, $1 to $2 a piece. Really don't need any more at this point, I don't think, but I just feel like someday those may be harder to find. So every now and then I just go in and buy a few more, but it's gotten to the point where I think I've probably got enough. So yeah, we got rumble packs. You can see we got bags full of N64 memory cards and N64 rumble packs, Dreamcast VMUs, and so on. Cleaning kit. And moving across here to this next drawer, here's where we've got various light guns. This is like a PS1, PS2 light gun. It works for both systems. This is for the Saturn, not the Justifier, forget what the name of that one is. And then we got a couple GunCon 2s for use with the PS2. And just some other random accessories. We've got an NES 4 score in here. We've got a turbo tap for the TurboGrafx. Another tap for the PS1. Just random things like that. Xbox headset. Just things I didn't really know where else to put them, so they made their way into here. A few more DS games here. These are some of the kids' games that any cool grown adult doesn't want in their collection. I shouldn't say that about all of those. I actually think this Duck 'Em Up game is pretty cool, but and then we got some TurboGrafx box games there, and then a stack of loose hue cards here. Some decent games in there. Newtopia, Vegas, not even sure how you pronounce that one. Galaga 90 is in here, Pac-Land, things like that. Yeah, one of these Guitar Hero on Tour things for the DS. A couple plug-and-plays in here. Got an Atari Paddle one. Got this Miss Pac-Man one. Got an odd joystick or two. Like this is, I think, is like an arcade joystick for the 360, but it's a weird kind of arcade joystick. And yeah, I got my Sega 3D glasses back there. And what else? We've got a Super Scope receiver there. Okay, and this next drawer is mainly portable games. You can see we've got Game Boy Advance games here. Again, I'm not going to go through all of those right now, but quite a few good ones in there. Then we've got my Atari Lynx games. I've just got those bundled together at this point. Some loose DS games I've been picking up when they've been clearing them out at GameStop. Hate the fact that they sell them loose like that because they're just so small, but I'll still take them for a few bucks. Some standard Game Boy and Game Boy Color games here. Probably the most unusual one here is my Mega Man 5, which is a fairly expensive game. Unfortunately, the one that I found came with no label, so it just says Mega Man 5 on it, unfortunately. One of these days I'm going to have to see if I can fix that. And we got some Game Gear games back here. Some with cases, some without. Those Neo Geo Pocket Color games I think I mentioned earlier. Some boxed Game Boy games back here, which I'm not really going to pull out. Some unusual stuff like this NTEX Select a Game cartridge. And then plus I think some like cheating or code devices for the Game Boy. Just a bunch of random stuff, which again I may get into more detail in some future videos on these things. And then up here in this drawer are things like extension cables, link cables, just loose. I've got extension cables for most of the systems that I have over on the rack over there. Got some mice here. We've got a Dreamcast mouse. We've got a Super Nintendo mouse. We've got a GameCube microphone. A card reader for the Game Boy Advance. Just all kinds of randomness. But it's, relatively organized. I know if I'm looking for something along these lines that this is the drawer I'm going to go to for it. So it doesn't take me long to find it. And then we've got this shelf of, again, just more randomness, not really in the game room, but kind of encroaching into my office space here. So I've got a little bit of, you know, different books and things like that. But you can see I've got my strategy guides, things like that. And then I've got some random PC stuff, and I've got my boxed Odyssey 2 games down there, my boxed Master System games, and then a bunch of just loose jewel case PC games. I actually have a pretty good-sized collection of PC games, boxed PC games, but I just don't really have anywhere that I can put those at the moment, so I just leave out some of these jewel case ones for now. And again, always still on the hunt for them, and I've found a few lately, like Heretic there, and that Quake expansion pack, and Grand Prix Legends. You know, still a lot of games I'm interested in if I happen to run across them. All right, we're approaching my dirty, messy work desk, but that's where I've got my gaming PC set up here, and I really just wanted to show you real quick some of the handful of boxed PC games that I do leave out here. And particularly I wanted to show this. I absolutely love Doom, the original Doom, and was lucky enough to run into this. If you know the history of Doom, you know that the original was distributed primarily via shareware, and then people could call a number to register it and get the full version that way. So not too many boxed copies of the original were ever released. You actually had to call in, or either call or write into id Software themselves. And I don't believe they had any distributor. This doesn't have a barcode or anything like that on it. I think they were just basically boxing these up themselves and sending them out. So yeah, so this is the original fully registered Doom. Very unusual game, and a game that's really been skyrocketing in price lately if you can find one of these. And of course, picked it up at a thrift store, I think for $3 or $4, and needless to say was quite excited. I love that box art. Just love that box art. Well, thank you for watching part 1 of my game collection overview videos here. I will probably do a follow-up episode or 2 where I'll go through and give you another look at my garage, which is where I've got my arcade machine and my pinball machine, and I've got a lot of additional systems and things like that that I keep out there in storage bins right now. A lot of, you know, like different variants on systems that I have here in the game room, like my Model 1 and Model 2 Sega CDs, for example. So again, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.